The information we received from GitHub includes this repos URL, which if we follow that link, we will find out information about the repositories associated with that user. So the first thing I'll point out about the response is it starts with a bracket in a JavaScript object notation. That means we're dealing with an array. So what we have is an array of objects where each object represents the information about a specific repository. Information like the name, and then if we scroll down a bit, we can also see there's information about the number of stars that repository has, as well as the primary language that GitHub has detected for that repository. And this is the information that we want to retrieve and display on the screen. So we will start back in our controller. Once we receive information about a user, we can issue another HTTP GET request and send this one off to scope.user.repos_URL. That will retrieve the repository information. That particular method call, though, will only give us a promise back, so we have to call then, and then I'll say when we have repositories or when we have an error. I might want to fix up this error function to say could not fetch the data. Typically in a real application, you'd have to dig into this reason, perhaps inspect the status code and the URL that was being called, and come up with a more specific error message so someone could diagnose exactly what went wrong. For now, I'm just going to leave on error like this. And now I need on repos. Also a function that takes a response. That will be all the repository information. And I will attach that to scope.repos equals response.data. There's actually a couple different things I could do there. I could take that repository information and attach it to user. So scope.user.repos equals response.data. But I'll leave it as a top-level collection here in the scope. That will also work. And although I'm not a big fan of the abbreviation REPOS, I'm going to stick with that since that is actually the name of the field that GitHub returns. And using that will reduce the chance of confusion. Now over in the view, I need to walk up to that property and be able to display information about each repository. Typically, you would display information from an array inside of an unordered list or a table. I'm going to go with a table because I want to display multiple things about each repository. In fact, as I write out the T head here, we'll figure out exactly what we want to display. Let's display the name of the repository, the number of stars for that repository, and the primary language for that repository. And now I'm going to write the T body, and this is where I will need a table row for each repository. How does one do that with Angular? That's the job of the ng-repeat directive. So I'll write an expression here, repo in repos. And the idea is that ng-repeat is a lot like a for loop, or more like a for each loop in C# if you use C#. There is going to be a variable repo that will contain the value of each repository in that collection as we iterate or loop through that array of repositories. What ng-repeat will also do is take this element, this table row, and stamp that out for each repository. So for each time through the loop, and it's also going to include any child elements inside of that HTML. So if I write out a table cell, I'll get a row with a cell for each repository. Inside of the first cell, I want to write out the repository name. So it's as if repository is available inside of the scope where ng-repeat lives. And in fact, that's exactly what is happening. Repo is available inside of here. We want the stargazers count. And we also want the language for the repository. And now if I have 10 repositories, I should have 10 table rows. Let's flip over into the preview window and try this out. Search for Angular. And it looks like I have the successful result. Now there are a couple issues with this display. One notable one would be that the format for the number of stars on this repository, isn't very readable because it doesn't include any commas or any sort of delimiter for the difference between what's in the thousands and what's in the 100s. So let me show you a quick way to fix that. In addition to directives in Angular, Angular also has the concept of filters. A filter is something that you invoke and pipe data through by using the pipe symbol and then the name of the filter. So this expression that I have now, repo.stargazers_count, pipe into number. Number is a filter that can take data, the count of stargazers, and format it. In this case, I want it formatted as a number. Number is one of many filters out there. And if we do a search now, I can see that the larger numbers are formatted a little bit better. So 23,209 for Angular.js, it's 23,000. If I wanted to include some digits after the decimal point, this is the syntax to say, please give me 1 digit after the decimal point. That's obviously not something that I need for the number of stars, so I will remove that. But there's a number of filters included with Angular out of the box. Filters that allow you to format numbers as currencies, format date values, output JSON, even order some collection. So it might be nice when we bring up this table of information if we had the ability to order the list of repositories alphabetically, or by the number of stars, or by the primary language. We'll look at that next.